All right, fortunately for me, between the starting panel and everyone who went before me, you're going to understand all the concepts, and I have very few slides, so I can talk fast. My name is Carol Fowler. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company based out of Austin, Texas called Transmute. And you can think of us as aiming to be kind of like the TSA PreCheck or the global entry for cross-border trade. So we're digitizing and securing trade. Like I mentioned, the panel and many of us have talked about how fragmented and paper-based the supply chain still is today. With less than 1% of documents across the supply chain used for cross-border trade fully digitized today, we're in a pretty reactive position, particularly here in the US. And if we could fully digitize all of that, we would be able to add over 75 billion in annual trade volumes alone just to the United States. So Transmute exists to digitize all of those data formats we've been talking about, PDFs, EDI, Excel spreadsheets, paper, images, into something called verifiable credentials, which is a technology that we've developed under contract over the last 5 years with Department of Homeland Security and US Customs and Border Protection. And we're applying it today. But first, I wanted to talk about a slightly different angle of the problem, which is why is it so hard to digitize or bridge all of these different data silos? And because there's fragments, systems aren't interoperable. You've heard folks talk about that. But also, it's because at a port of entry, there's really 3 primary interests that have been historically in competition. My home state in Texas is probably the best example of this, for better or for worse, when our governor is manually, for instance, stopping trucks looking for fentanyl in the haystack. He doesn't want, we want to protect our consumer safety. We don't want illicit or violative goods coming across our ports of entry. But unfortunately, when we're not using data or technology to identify those violative goods, our facilitation suffers, our tax revenue suffers, and our economic development suffers. We're rerouting all of that money to other states, and we're stalling facilitative benefits for carriers and freight forwarders and folks who are moving those goods, who are utilizing assets at 100%, and they can't recoup that revenue. So our solution exists to not only protect privacy and competitiveness, but positively impact trade across all 3 vectors. Let's speed up ports of entry, but let's also be targeted about our enforcement and collect accurate revenue. So our product is called the Verifiable Data Platform. It's a web app like many others here today. We have an API and some AI tooling that allow us to ingest all those different manual data formats and transmute that information into machine-readable digital twins, product passports, or verifiable credentials. I'll use those 3 terms interchangeably because different regions of the world will refer to the same technology a little bit differently. But ultimately, this feature alone allows our commercial customers, since we launched late last year commercially, brokers, manufacturers, logistics providers, to save up to 90% in data administration costs. So less keystrokes, no redundant information. You're not managing copies of information anymore. You're always sharing cryptographically signed information in real time across the supply chain that can also be revoked, suspended, or expired depending on your needs, say if you're managing a recall. The other beautiful thing, and you've seen a lot of pretty knowledge graphs tonight, is that because we use linked data or semantic web technology under the hood of all of our digital credentials, the information is automatically snapped together and linked in a way that's easy to query and peruse. So if you want to understand how many suppliers do I need to reshore from, say, Asia to Mexico to take advantage of USMCA origin tariffs because I'm an automotive maker, this helps you do that as a business holder without getting out of your existing habit loops or needing to really understand or pay a data analyst to aggregate all of that information. And if you know anything about AI or LLMs, you want your data organized and structured into a knowledge graph because that is what's going to yield any kind of reliable or actionable result. In fact, we've found that your data being structured this way and fed into an AI model generally yields over 3 times more accurate predictive capabilities. We're already, like I mentioned, in market today. We've developed the core technology with US government, but Canada, the UK, and the EU are also on board with the same technology. We're predominantly focused today on LATAM imports into the United States because if we could just speed up our southern ports of entry by 10 minutes, we could add over 325 million in annual trade volumes to these southern regions alone every year, which is a huge opportunity. Last but not least, we, like others, love our partners at Refashion Ventures. We're a Techstars company, also backed by our channel partner in Nueve Leon, Grupo Prudenza, and many others that might be interesting to the group here. So come find me if you're interested in learning more. Thank you.